Well, it's another great morning, and I've got everything ready to kick off a great day. Let's review the list. Birds chirping? Check. Green tea boiling? Check. My work clothes laid out for the week? Double check. Why, we've got my maroon sweatsuit for Monday, my teal lounger for Tuesday, and my white flannel onesie for Wednesday. Hold on a second. I think I'm seeing a pattern here. Has my leisure wear become my new wardrobe for the home office? Is it time for me to step up my fashion game? Well, lucky for me, we've got the perfect guest on today's episode to help me out with this. But first, I'll need to finish my daily kale and honeydew power smoothie. I'm Jeff Livingston, and this is ADP's Insights at Work podcast. Let's dive in. This is the podcast that looks at what's happening in the HR world, takes your questions and studies the research to help HR experts move forward. It's prepared by HR experts for HR experts. And today's Insights at Work episode is pretty special, not just because we've got an Instagram celebrity in our midst, but also because I had a reason to wear something else other than slippers and shorts to the home office today. Why, this shirt doesn't even have a stain on it. And I'd like to thank our guest for that motivation. Julianne Costigan is one of North America's premier fashion stylists. You've most likely seen her on lifestyle, entertainment, and fashion programs. You've definitely seen her clients on stage at the helm of North America's top 100 companies and strutting their stuff on the red carpet. She's the CEO and creative director of her own styling design firm and a believer that accentuating your natural beauty in every aspect of your life creates a signature style that represents exactly who you are. Let's hope that my carefully curated ensemble today can live up to her high expectations. Welcome to the Insights at Work podcast, Julianne.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here, and I just can't wait to dive into so many juicy things about how to get dressed when today's workplace is just a little bit different.
Julianne, you couldn't be more accurate. Things are different, especially with what we're now wearing to the home office. Julianne, there's two major social media influencers that have a lot of pull inside my household. I wish one of them was me, but I'm not that lucky. The first is teen pop sensation Jojo Siwa. Sophie, our delightful 6-year-old daughter, is taken to sporting large bows in her hair and constantly dancing around. Thanks, Jojo. And the second is you. I read your blog, seen your appearances on the talk show circuit, but this morning when I saw my wife leaving with what looked like a new JW PEI croissant top handle bag, I knew my role as influencer had been knocked down a peg or two. So for those of us who might still be wearing board shorts and sandals to the park on the weekends, can you please fill our listeners in as to what exactly a fashion stylist is and how you got into the business?
A lot of people aren't familiar with the term fashion stylist, but to be concise, my job is choosing wardrobe for a person who needs help. And that often can be in the commercial and advertising world. That can be in the editorial world, so models in magazines. And that's where I sort of started. But recently, in the last 5 years, I switched my whole business from advertising and marketing and editorial styling into working with what I call women of influence. So women who understand that the way they dress impacts how they feel and how people see them, and it has a direct impact on their success, both personally and professionally. And I always say now, I'll never be a doctor, but I feel like in a small way, I am a doctor with clothing, and I use these things and I really make a difference in people's lives, and I love that. I decided to go to university, and I went to Toronto to Ryerson for fashion communications, and then during my time there, I interned at Pink Tartan, Ramona Caveza, and I went to school in Paris and London. I did programs there, and I ended up kind of getting into this commercial advertising styling world. which was great. And that's predominantly where the work is in Toronto, is in these commercial advertising jobs. But I realized over time that it wasn't fulfilling me, and I wasn't going to do it long term, and I wanted to make a switch back to where I really realized that I had a passion within this fashion industry. And so I decided to totally, flip the switch. I left my agency that I was with, and I went off on my own, and I just pursued all the women in my network and talked to them about how I could help them. And I realized that there are so many women who need my help. And so it's been amazing to transition my career from this advertising world into, really focusing on working with women. And now I also work with brands who have a focus on these women that I help. So I'm really trying to become an expert in the field of women who want to just look great day to day and in the workplace. And they understand that they perform better, they feel better, and it really impacts their whole life when they just wear clothing that makes them feel great. So that's who I am. That's where I am today. And that's my story.
Julianne, it sounds like you've got a lot in common with the world of HR professionals and business leaders. You are helping empower others to make big breakthroughs of their own.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think I've realized that over time, style leads to confidence, and confidence leads to success. And that's really it. It's as simple as that.
Julianne, you use the word confidence. Now, I remember a shift taking place in advertising back in the mid-2000s. I was teaching marketing in my spare time, and I'd refer to the Unilever Dove soap campaign, which employed regular people. Now, it was neat because at that time we were seeing this new approach taking place around using regular people in advertising imagery. And I think the Dove campaign influenced other sectors to follow suit.
I actually worked on a Dove campaign at that time, and I got to work with, and we dressed them all in white, which was a big part of their campaign. And I think that was definitely a pivotal point for me too, because I was still doing a lot of the advertising work. And that was a campaign that brought me back to my roots of working with real women, real bodies, and hearing their stories about, things that helped them feel better about themselves. And everyone had a different story, whether it was beauty or, a piece of clothing or, a coworker helped them or whatever it was. But I think that was a great campaign and definitely pivotal. And I think that now we're really seeing people own their bodies, own their style and their individuality, and bring that as their unique asset to the workplace.
I heard that you're a brand new mother to a baby boy named George. So congrats on that. Welcome to the world of parenthood and visiting the local park, where you will soon become accustomed to hearing the term, "one more push on the swing, please." Julianne, tell me, when you're hanging out with George at the park, do you listen in on the other parents' talks about fashion, and do you offer them advice?
So I live on a street, I'm looking at it right now, with a huge parkette in front. And so I've met so many of my neighbors and become very close with them that way. And actually a lot of my neighbors have become clients of mine now because it happened exactly like that. I am just, before George, just, walking with my husband or, stop and chat. And they ask, once they know I'm in the fashion industry, they always have questions and send me text messages or ask me. And then I talk about what I'm doing, and very quickly, I give them advice, and it leads to business because people realize they made that quick little change that I suggested, and they felt so much better. And they understand that there is a real relationship between that.
Julianne, a lot of us have been sequestered away, working remotely for the last year since the pandemic hit. And one thing I've noticed is just how common it is to see parents wearing their pajamas when they drop the kids off at the bus stop in the morning, and wearing those same pajamas again when they pick them up in the afternoon. Now, since this is the type of fashion I see on Zoom calls throughout the day, have what we considered business casual been taken to a whole new level, something much more casual? Is business wear just for the waist up?
I'm a true believer that wearing an entire outfit, even if I'm not going to be on Zoom with my video on, I still get ready and get dressed and I put on mascara because that makes a difference for me. And maybe it's not my full makeup routine or not my, uncomfortable blazer or something that doesn't feel as comfortable, but I'm definitely getting dressed from head to toe because I find it really makes a difference. I even bought, what I would call fashionable slippers because I coordinate them with my outfits because it just makes me feel better. And that might be going to an extreme and not everyone needs to do that. But I know a lot of people are only dressing, top up, but I think that has a direct impact on your productivity in the workplace and how you perform, because you feel different. You feel different in different clothing. So, I wear pajamas to bed because they're comfortable. They signal to me that I can go to sleep. When I wake up in the morning, I get dressed in something that is different from my, pajamas, because I know that I have to be more productive. I'm able to just be more productive, I guess, in those clothing because that's the relationship I have with that clothing. I guess going back to that whole relationship thing. And I have my weekend clothes and I have my, sweatsuits or my Lululemons that I change into when I'm working out. And that's all because there's something mentally that triggers when you wear those clothes. And so getting to your point, I think that it's important to dress head to toe. And I don't think that, dressing just top up will last that long. It's sort of I think it's a funny thing that people do. And it is funny, but long-term, I don't think it's here to stay. And I would encourage and challenge people to get dressed from head to toe and see if they feel different. And going back to my point of, don't wear your uncomfortable pants, wear a black pant, get out of the black leggings for women, wear a black pant that's equally comfortable and stretchy and see if that makes you feel different. Because I guarantee you, if you track of what you accomplish on the day when you wear your pants in a full outfit versus when you wear the leggings, you'll see that there's a little bit of a difference in what you actually get done in the day.
You are so right. When I get up and get changed and I put the right clothes on for the right job, for me, it makes a world of difference. During the week, a collared shirt puts me in the mindset of work. And believe it or not, on the weekend, I have a one-piece set of coveralls that I wear for working on the car or around the house. It makes me feel like I can competently take on any DIY task.
Yeah, no, I think everyone can, if they pay attention, they'll realize that they have that relationship too. But just most often people don't realize that they have a relationship with their clothing, or that you can have a great relationship with your clothing and use it as a tool in your closet to help you achieve your successes every single day.
Julianne, lately I'd say my relationship with my clothing has been one of long distance, probably because of the weight I've put on since the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I know we all have that. What are they saying? COVID-19. I think we've all got the COVID-19, but getting out of the leggings helps get you into the regular clothes, I think.
So, Julianne, talking about leggings, what is considered business casual nowadays? Has it changed? And what do you think we'll expect it to be when we eventually return to the workplace?
Definitely not. I don't think so at all. I think that we are going to see some of the silhouettes or qualities that we love about our sweatpants and the comfies we're wearing at home, maybe right now being introduced into the silhouettes that we wear to work. So we're seeing actually that come into the trend report for spring, summer, and fall, winter. Jeans, some of the jeans we're seeing now have a lot more stretch to them, or they have elastic bands versus, button up. And so I think we're going to see that happen. And we may see people wear, if they're allowed to wear jeans to work and they have a, business casual, maybe they do choose a stretchier jean or something like that. And I think those trends are completely acceptable, but I don't think leggings, unless you work at a gym or you're in the fitness industry, I don't think we're going to see that happen. People might try it, but I think it's important to keep a strong policy of getting dressed for the workplace. And I think business casual, I think we are going to see a lot of offices become more casual. And I think that's okay, because I think that there are still great ways to dress casual. So again, it's maybe we're seeing more relaxed blazers. We're seeing no ties and pocket squares, but we're still wearing a shirt, and maybe it's just not done up all the way. And a lot of offices have already adopted those policies, but I think that we're going to see them in other industries as well. And on those days when you have big meetings, that's when you dress up.
I agree that when I dress up, clothes not only make me feel a certain way, but I also think they help project a certain persona to others. What I'm wearing makes an impression, sometimes good, maybe sometimes not so good. I wonder how much someone's perception of me is affected simply by what I'm wearing.
All of these things help you feel a certain way, but also on the flip side, help people see you the way you want to be seen, because that I think the clothing is not just about you, it's about how people see you. And that's what a lot of people also forget about is, thinking about, how do I appear? How do people, especially on a Zoom call like this, I think, even just wearing a bit of color can help people remember you. But there's a fine line. You don't want to be loud and be the girl who, or the guy who, oh, look, he wore that outrageous thing. What was he thinking? He looked hilarious. If that's not what you want to be on the Zoom call. So really understanding what people see you as when they see you in the clothing that you're wearing. So there's, I think, two sides to the story. And that's a huge part of me working with clients, is helping them understand those perspectives. And some people feel really great in something that actually doesn't communicate what they want. And so I have to help them understand that.
Julianne, what are some tips that you can offer that are going to make a difference in how I present myself starting today?
Just simply steaming your clothes says that you are organized, you're polished, you care, you have attention to detail. By wearing something wrinkly, even if it's a really expensive suit or a blouse, this is a Zoom call, especially right now, but even in person. And people look at those and then they think, oh, maybe she is disorganized and she was rushing this morning and she didn't have the time to steam it. And I don't want someone who's going to rush an email and just send it to a client. That's not the type of person I want to hire here. And when I have those conversations with clients, then they quickly realize, oh, you're right. I never thought about that, and those are really important details to consider.
It's funny because I too have a little rule of my own about those little details. I aim to dress 10% better than whomever I'm meeting with. You could probably pick me out of the room by the height of my top hat.
I'm definitely in your boat. I think overdressing to a degree is never a bad thing. And I think if anything, it just sets you apart. And there's a way to overdress in not a loud way. And I would say that's the commonality between all of my clients personally, is they come to me and they say, I just want to look more professional. I want to be stylish and fashionable, but I don't want to walk into the room and be that person everyone notices. I want to be the person that everyone just always says, oh, she just has this, or he just has this effortless, he just always looks put together. How is that possible? It just seems so, easy for him. But it's not, it's never that easy. And there's a lot of little, there's time and effort that goes into that. But that's what, to me, overdressing even just that 10% is.
Julianne, you talk about having that one item that pops. One thing that I think all of us can relate to is the job interview. Now that the job interview has become virtual in most cases, what are some tips that you can offer to the candidate as to what they might want to consider wearing?
So I think the first thing you want to consider is, what are you interviewing for? And you never want to show up outdressing your interviewer or your boss, for example, but you do want to be potentially on their level, even if you are junior to them. So I think you really have to do your research and know, what is the office culture like, and what types of things are they wearing there, or look at it, and if it's casual but you think they should be kicking it up just a little bit. I don't think that's a bad thing either, but always knowing who your audience is. So that's a huge thing. I think a blazer is almost always, I think, a great call. It's just professional. It's one of those uniforms across the board that says professionalism. And I think when you're interviewing, that's important. Now, if you're interviewing to be, something, a waitress or something where it's, you've got a clear uniform. I think if you're going to wear the blazer, you wear something more relaxed. But that's what I love about fashion right now, is that there are so many versions of everything. And so when I say a blazer across the board, it doesn't mean that you have to wear a black suit blazer. Maybe you wear something that has a little bit of detail to it that makes it more casual, or it has a casual, fabric or fit, or so really paying attention, I think, to who your audience is. And then a blazer is a great call. I think a white shirt is always great and clean and professional. I think also paying attention to hair, makeup, your beauty routine, even for men, if you've got facial hair, just trimming it and making sure it looks sort of clean and again, like you've put the effort into it. I think for me, those are the best pieces and best things to think about when going for an interview. And also remember, what is it in your closet that makes you feel great? Because at the end of the day, you need to perform for your interview, and don't wear a blazer if that doesn't make you feel great, or search for a blazer that you feel different in. I always speak about having a uniform. For me, my uniform, which is sort of my armor, the thing that I feel always 100% confident in, is a blazer. And that is because I have a brand, Smythe. It's a Canadian brand. They hold my shoulders back in a way that just make me feel really powerful. And so I know that about blazers. And so I almost am always wearing a blazer because I love it and I feel great. And then some sort of collared shirt. And I, in my industry, can almost always wear denim. Maybe not a ripped denim, but something, dressed up. And you don't realize those things, they do set you apart. And that might be what someone they remember you because you had that sound walking
like
in,
a squeak,
and they paid more attention to you. If they were, and you might be number 15 in 20 interviews, and walking in with a little bit more presence and energy can make you really memorable.
Well, thanks for the advice, Julianne. Now, let's say I get the job. Now, for many companies, the office dress code goes unspoken. I've seen instances where it quietly causes issues. And most of the time, I've had to sign off on acknowledging dress code standards. Julianne, do you think when bringing on new employees, it's important to discuss dress code and share your expectations for how employees should present themselves? And what should you consider when putting together a company's dress code policy?
Yeah, I think this is a tricky conversation often for employers because it feels very touchy and it's hard to dictate what people wear, but you want to make sure that your brand image is communicated from your employees to your clients. And so I think the first thing you can do is really just start off by thinking about it that way, that your employees' image needs to be coordinate with the company's brand image, because ultimately they are the ones that are client facing potentially, and you need to make sure that they're communicating the right message.
You know what I think's interesting is that when I'm thinking about dress code policies from the HR perspective, I'm sure that it's important to recognize that dress codes should never infringe upon protected grounds under human rights laws such as gender expression, creator disability. Now, I wonder if there ever would be different dress codes specific to certain industries.
So it depends. I work a lot in the law and finance world, but actually when I'm creating these branding guidelines, it's actually more for creative fields. So architect firms, interior design firms, marketing firms, advertising firms. Those are the companies in the industries who tend to hire me for that, because I think also there's more flexibility in the way you dress, whereas in law and finance, it's pretty, people know what they need to do. There's literally, I mean, in Toronto, shops underneath all the towers that have all the clothes you need to buy with the brands you need. So it's a little bit more standard, whereas I think in the creative world and field, there's more opportunity for employees to dress as they want and kind of move away from what you want your brand to be seen as within, you know, the workplace and with clients.
With more millennials and Gen Z sporting tattoos and piercings now than any other generation before, it's rekindled the debate to a whole new level. I've seen studies that show nearly 40% of adults in the US have tattoos and 61% have piercings, clearly overlooking more than half of the population simply because of their appearance, as opposed to their qualifications. From an HR perspective, is both profoundly illogical and discriminatory. But how open-minded when it comes to diversity and personal expression in the workplace should we be? Julianne, should a business have a policy to avoid offensive skin art or piercings?
I personally think this is a hard one to actually put into place, but again, I think it all comes down to making sure that your employees know the audience that you're speaking to, and also when hiring, that you think about that too. You know, I think the way someone shows up to an interview should be the best that they're ever going to look in your workplace. So taking that into consideration as well. I think, you know, facial hair is not unprofessional anymore. I definitely don't think it's seen that way. And I think a lot of men also use it to look a little bit older when they're younger. If it's manicured properly, it can actually look really great, and it can be a nice way for someone to differentiate themselves, or just to look great. And I think facial hair is totally fine. As are tattoos, I think, again, we're moving away from the trend of I think, you know, if you have a tattoo on your arm, you have to cover it up. I think you have to look at the company you work at and whether it feels right to show them off. I think most people still do cover them up, but I don't think that having tattoos makes you unhireable. But I think when you see someone in an interview and they show up and they have all their tattoos exposed, then you're going to have to know they're likely going to feel comfortable showing up to work with the tattoos exposed. And if you don't feel that that is something you're going to be okay with in the workplace, you have to consider that.
On a past episode of the Insights at Work podcast, we had Martha Bird, a renowned business anthropologist, as a guest. Before the podcast, I checked out her LinkedIn profile, and she had sleeve tattoos and tattoos across her chest. In fact, her profile picture had her wearing a vest, so you could clearly see her tattoos. Now, I've gotten to know Martha pretty well since that podcast, and those tattoos, they're part of who she is. They're part of her brand. Her LinkedIn profile, it's a pretty accurate representation of who Martha is. Julianne, what's your recommendation for how someone's LinkedIn profile should look like?
Well, I think a lot of people, I've noticed that a lot of people's LinkedIn profile pictures often are full body. And I think that because the profile picture is quite small, you should consider making sure that they can really see your face in it. I think another thing is, like you just mentioned, a girl wearing tattoos and clearly showing them in her profile image. I think when you look at that, you have to know that she is going to show up with those tattoos, that she's obviously making a statement, and that's completely fine. But she has to know that she may be judged because of that, and also, you know, remembered because of that. And that those are two okay things. And I think also that says that she's bold, you know, and deliberate. I love that word that you just used, because I think that's also something some people might be looking for. You know, they may have hired timid people in the past, and they're looking for someone who just shows up as is, says it like it is. And that's what she's communicating in that profile image. So it's never a bad thing, but you should know that. And I think also asking people what they think of your profile image is not a bad thing either, because you might think it looks great and others might say, I think you don't, you know, you look a little bit wrinkled or disheveled? Or do you know that exposing your tattoos says this about you? And as long as you're okay with that, then that's fine.
I think our wardrobe changes a lot over time as we age and obtain more senior positions. I'd love to hear what wardrobe tips you have for the person who's just starting out in the workplace, and what are those foundational pieces that they should invest in? And then what fashion items that we need to purchase as we get older and obtain those more senior positions.
When you're just starting out in your career, I think investing in some quality pieces is key. So a great blazer or a suit, if that's the industry you're working in, a comfortable pair of shoes. I think a lot of women, specifically more than men, wear shoes that are uncomfortable, and you can tell when you see them. And there's nothing more uncomfortable, even as someone in the audience, than watching someone hobble in heels or shoes that they can't walk in. And that impacts your posture, which impacts how you present yourself and what people think of you. And you're probably focusing on not being able to walk in the shoes rather than focusing on what you really want to talk about. I think, a great white shirt, for men, a couple of, think about, instead of just buying pieces, buy things that coordinate together so that you get more with less items. That's something that I'm really big on, versatility. So keeping that in mind in everything that you purchase. So for women, it's a blazer, a great white shirt, probably, a dress, a great pair of heels or flats that are comfortable, and a great, black pant. And then for men, it's a great suit with, maybe one or two suits max, with shirts and pocket squares and ties that mix and match, so that, you can use 2 suits and 3 shirts and make 15 outfits. That's the key, I think, when you're just starting out, and investing in those pieces so that they fit you well and they look great and last a long time. And then as you become more senior, I think this is actually where you get to have more fun with your wardrobe, because you feel a little bit more sure about yourself, confident, you know who you are, you know why people come to you, why you're in the position you're in. So I think, again, looking at those traits that differentiate you, and buying pieces that are going to communicate that. So, maybe, like I mentioned, you're a little bit edgier. So why not find, a blazer with a leather lapel or something that's a little bit more interesting? That's when I think you get to invest in those pieces that are just different. And they're almost elevated basics, I would say, something just slightly more interesting. I think that's how you evolve your wardrobe over time.
Julianne, from what I've heard today and from what I've read on your site and what I've read about you, style goes far beyond just what we wear, but how we smell, how we feel, and what we surround ourselves with. In our virtual settings, how does style extend itself into our Zoom and video conference call world?
Well, I love that you touched on smell there, because I do think, all of your senses are a big part of how you show up. And when you're in person, the way you smell is a big part of that. But on Zoom, people can't smell you, obviously. So I think, wearing clothes that make you feel comfortable and hold your shoulders back. So, now people are looking at you probably more than they ever have before. And instead of noticing the way you smell, they might notice the way you speak. So looking at clothes that make you speak more confidently. And this is all so personal and so individual for each person. And so it's really important to track when you feel great in a piece of clothing, or when people compliment you or say, hey, that was a great presentation you made. Think about, did that have something to do with the clothes that I wore? I got out of my t-shirt, I put on a colored shirt, and someone told me I, hosted a better meeting than I did yesterday when I was wearing a t-shirt. Did that have an impact on the way they saw me or the confidence I brought to that meeting? So I think those are some of the other senses that we can pay attention to right now. And like I said, not just thinking about clothes, but having a shower and, washing your hair, blow drying your hair. Those are all little things that I think we can't forget about right now. And I mean, even on Zoom calls, I think, your surroundings, what's behind you, that's a big part. Even you might have a great blazer on, but if you've got mess everywhere behind you, people focus on that and look at it. And it's better to just have a blank white wall, maybe be on your bed with your headboard behind you than to be somewhere where it looks really messy and kind of gross, because people probably won't listen to you because they'll be so focused on your surroundings. But that's another part I think that's important to think about, especially right now.
Julianne, if I could ask you to get out your crystal ball of couture, what would you predict things are going to look like when we eventually return to the office?
So I have done a lot of research on this topic because everyone is curious about how things are going to change when we all return back. And of course it will change and be different, but I think a lot of people think it's going to be really casual, and there may be some workplaces that do that, but I actually think the general population is going to want to wear all those clothes that have been sitting collecting dust for the last year, and they're going to want to get dressed up. And if you look historically back at the Roaring 20s, which happened right after the Spanish flu pandemic, I think that had a lot to do with people being stuck in their houses for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, and probably not wearing all their great clothes, or maybe they didn't have great clothes, but as soon as they got released and got to go out into the world again, they were looking for any excuse to get dressed up and feel really good and have an excuse to wear, lipstick and wear sparkly clothes or fancier clothes than they typically have. And so I think that we're actually going to see that. And when I talk to all my clients and people through Instagram and social media, people are dying to wear their nice things again. They just don't feel like they have a great excuse. So when we all get back to work, I think you're going to see everyone dressing up more than they would have before.
Now, Julianne, before we wrap up with a list of your favorite things, do you have any last-minute insights to share with our listeners around fashion in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's like feeling comfortable in your clothes is huge. And once I work predominantly with women, but I work with men too. But as soon as you start to feel comfortable in your clothes, everything else falls into place, because it's just, you stop thinking about how you look and you concentrate on really what you're an expert in. And that is generally the client who comes to me first. And then after, she's like, wow, I got a raise, or I got a new position since working with you. And I think and she said, I'm thinking about one person in particular, said, I think it's because now I just feel good about myself, and I don't think about, not feeling great or not confident because I'm wearing clothes that don't make me feel that way. Wearing great clothes just allow me to focus on what I'm actually good at, why I was hired in this job. And so what I thought was a superficial sort of way to be and thinking about how you dress, I actually realized it's so much more than that. And that's who I work with. And that's why I think it's so important too.
Julianne, I've had so much fun today, and I hope you have too. Are you ready for my favorite part of the podcast, where the listeners and I get to know just a little bit more about what makes you tick?
I'm very ready.
Okay, let's start with the first question. Julianne, what's your favorite tool to help get work done?
So for me, it's definitely AirPods. Those help me multitask like crazy now, especially with having a baby. It's important to be able to be hands-free. So the AirPods help me do that. My Yeti thermos is a huge part. I am one of those people who reheats her coffee multiple times a day. I can never finish it. So I actually have my Yeti here right now because it keeps my coffee hot for an extremely long period of time, and it saves me time from reheating it all the time. And then I use Monday.com. It's a project management tool, and I found that introducing that into my life, being able to get off text and email as much within all the projects I'm working on and delegate that way, has made a huge difference in my productivity personally.
Julianne, what's your favorite resource to go to for industry information?
So there is a resource called the Business of Fashion, and it was actually started by someone in Calgary, and he started it, I don't know, probably 15 years ago now. But it's an amazing resource for all of anything you need to know about the fashion industry. It's there, and they publish articles themselves and also publish other articles. So that's where I go to learn and keep up to date with everything that's going on in the business and fashion world.
Julianne, what's your favorite music album of all time?
I would have to say Tom Petty's Greatest Hits. It's just always a classic for me. I just always go back to it. I'm a huge music lover, and I could list off a ton of albums, but I think if I could bring one CD with me on a road trip, and I say CD because I don't know why I said CD. I just think about myself, my first car, and putting that CD in. And that would be the CD I would bring.
Awesome. I think I still use the term CDs, Julianne. I think my road trip CD would be Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill.
Yes, that is such a great album. That would be a runner-up for me.
What was your favorite toy as a kid?
My favorite toy as a kid, was a cash register. I have this. I loved any sort of game where I got to be a cashier, and funny enough, I was always put on the sales floor in any retail job I had. And to this day, I still have barely used a cash register. So I say that if I ever retire one day, I would love to work at a grocery store in a small little town and be a cashier, because I have something about pressing the buttons, and I don't know, it's just always was something I loved.
Well, Julianne, that's the entrepreneur in you coming through. When my grandmother was 90, I asked her if there was anything that she hadn't achieved in her life that she really wanted to. And she told me that her dream was to have worked in a hardware store. That's what she actually said.
Oh my
Very
gosh.
similar to your retail. Very similar to your retail experience.
When you say hardware store, it sounds small town to me, which is what I mean about a grocery store too. It's like you get personal with people and you learn about what they're building, and they call and they need lumber, and you place a individual order for that lumber. I think about being at my cottage, and I would work at that hardware store too. I think that would be fun. And there's something also about the smell of a hardware store. It's wood and rubber, and those two scents, I don't know. I don't know. I love them.
Okay, last question. Now, you've already given us advice on what to start out with in your wardrobe early on in your career. How about some advice that you'd give to someone just starting out in their career?
Well, the piece of advice I always go back to, and I think is worth telling someone else, is something that my mom told me when I was young. And it was, someone can always be smarter than you. Someone could always be prettier than you, but no one can ever work harder than you. And that's something you're always in charge of. So I have always thought about that, and tried to use that to my advantage in my industry and in anything that I worked on. And I do believe that hard work pays off. And so I think it's a great piece of advice, because hard work costs nothing and you can always do it. So, and it goes a long way, especially right now, I think.
Well, it does go a long way, and it's clear that you put a lot of hard work into coming on the podcast today. And I really appreciate it, Julianne.
Oh, of course. I'm so happy to be here, and I hope that, what we talked about today can be helpful for other people. And, I think it's really important, and I think your wardrobe is a really great place to build your personal brand and your personal image, and use it to your advantage. And not enough people do. So use those tools that are in your closet, and see what kind of changes you can make in the workplace and in life.
And this is the part of the podcast where I thank everyone for listening in. I know it's tough to find time to carve out for thought leadership, and I appreciate you, the listener, for making the time for us. Anything we can do to help ourselves get better at something is time well spent. On our next episode, we'll be talking with more HR experts about today's most important HR issues. I'm Jeff Livingston. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be kind. We'll see you soon on our next episode of ADP's Insights at Work.